So yesterday I decided I was going to do something a little bit different to what I usually do on my YouTube channel, talking about Sony gear and giving you guys advice and all that sort of stuff. Yesterday I went to Auckland Camera Centre to pick up something else, and if you guys don't know, they deal in second-hand gear as well as new equipment. So if you need anything traded, you can go in there and they'll give you a price and make it really easy to trade in your gear on something new. While I was walking around the store just having a look around, I found in the cabinet this 5D Mark II with a 50mm 1.4. Now, for those of you that have been following my channel for a while, you know that me holding this camera is definitely out of the ordinary. It's a really old camera. It's maybe about 12 or 11 years old. And the 51.4, I'm not that up to play with Canon gear, but I believe it's one of their cheapest lenses at around about 500 New Zealand dollars. So still not a kit lens, but it's just a cheap 50mm prime. The 5D Mark II is a full frame camera, and it was a professional camera when it came out. It was kind of their flagship, I guess. You guys that are shooting Canon know that the 5D4 is the latest model, and it's a great camera as well. But what I've been discussing lately with other photographers and forums around Facebook is that I feel like the Sonys are so good that they just sometimes take away from the whole process of making an image. Shooting Sony for the last 3 years or so, I was not worried, but you kind of feel sometimes that maybe all this amazing gear that I'm using is taking away a little bit of my skill or something, I don't know. But the Sonys just make the process so easy and so thoughtless that you really don't have to think when you're taking the photos. For me, that's a really good thing because I just concentrate on moments and emotion and what's going on around me rather than what I have to do with the camera. Especially with the Sonys in terms of the focus system and eye focus and all that. So I decided I'd push myself a little bit. For me, the biggest challenge was that I didn't know this camera. I've never shot Canon professionally. When I first started in digital photography anyways, my first SLRs were Canon, so I think I had a 1000D kit or something, which is actually what I shot my first wedding on about 10 years ago. I don't know these cameras, and it was really quite difficult to go through. I couldn't figure out how to get it in back button focus, and there's just a few things that I didn't expect. But I've had the camera for a day, and today I went out to the beach and I met a completely random family and gave them a free family shoot just to sort of push my limits and see what I could do with this camera, see if I rely too much on having these Sony cameras. Now, all of these photos were just edited with the same presets that are on sale now, the same ones I use on my Sony cameras, and I didn't really have to change anything. The only difference really that I noticed in terms of color was this one is really, really pink. So I had to change the tint slider to the green, about +5 to +10, just to sort of get it neutral, I found. But, you know, it's kind of irrelevant if you're shooting RAW anyways. Now, the biggest thing that I noticed was the focus system. The Sony focus system is just light years ahead of any DSLR that I've used or anything. And it's not so much the performance and speed, although I do think it's definitely better. It's more about how you use the system. So with the Sony, for example, I can just fold out the rear screen like that, and I can sort of be hip shooting and using eye focus and not having to worry about holding the camera up to my eye. I really just wanted to just sink myself into it and put myself in a deep end and just see what I could come up with. So like I said, by far the biggest thing that stood out to me was the focus system. Second, like I said, was just having to hold the camera up to my eye. I'm really not used to that anymore. I was used to that when I shot Nikon. If you guys have been following along, you know that up until 3 years ago I was shooting Nikon professionally. I had a D750 and a D810, and they would have been pretty much the same as what this 5D2 is, just a little bit more advanced. So as I'm flicking through these images, you guys can see these are all taken with the 5D Mark II, this combo here with the 50mm 1.4, and I pushed myself even further and stuck with what I usually do with the Sonys, where I shoot 1.4 all day pretty much, unless I have to stop down because of a group shot or something like that. But every single one of these photos was taken at f1.4. So the biggest thing with this 50mm 1.4 is that it's really quite bad wide open, but it's an old lens, it's really cheap. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely cheap lenses that are better wide open. I think even the 50mm 1.8, from what I gather, is better wide open than this lens. But at the end of the day, I delivered these images already. The shoot was tonight, and the client already has these images, and she was just over the moon with them. She was really, really happy. I think the thing I've learned is that although gear does make a difference, and if you had these cameras side by side, like my A7 III and this 5D2, you'd by far see the difference really, really easily, and I think even the client would see the difference. That's just not a realistic situation. Most people, I'm sure it happens, but most people aren't going to shoot a 5D Mark II and an A7 III side by side. They're just too different. They're too far away from each other, and it just doesn't make any sense. So at the end of the day, what I learned was that it really doesn't matter It doesn't matter what camera you're using, it doesn't matter what lens you're using. It's more about the skill you have and the knowledge you have and just using your eye to create these images, and more importantly the moments and the emotion that you capture when you're talking about photographing people, weddings or families or anything like that. So really, I guess if you're going to take something away from this, is that you should just be encouraged to just go out. If this is something you want to do, if you want to start getting into photography, if you feel that you want to get into weddings, I'd be totally happy shooting this at a wedding. I would definitely have to work much harder to get the results that I want with this camera, but it would be fine. You know, at the end of the day, the client isn't going to be able to tell the difference, and they're going to love the images anyways. There are differences when it comes to low light performance, like obviously the A7 III is just going to cream this 5D2 in low light. So really at the end of the day, I think the main thing that I learned is that it just really doesn't matter. All of this gear stuff, if you have the skill and you have the experience and you have the eye for it, if you can interact with these people or your clients and create that emotion that you're really after, and if you can freeze that and get it in focus and edit it well, there's not really going to be any issue with what equipment you're using. Now the reason I use Sony cameras is because they're just so amazing. The focus system is just mind-blowingly good, and it just makes my job easier. So if I'm shooting 50 weddings a year, I really want to make the process easy. I don't want to make it harder. So is this a 5D2 review? I'm not too sure, but if you're in the market for a camera, maybe you can't afford the newest technology, the best of the best, then I'm sure even a 5D Mark I would do the job. The point is, go out and grab a camera and just start taking some photos. Learn how to interact with your clients, learn how to make them laugh and get that real emotion out of people, and you're pretty much home safe. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want to see anything in the future, drop a comment below, subscribe to my channel, and I'd be happy to help you out.